Over the course of 1,500 years, 40 authors were inspired by the Spirit of God. Some were farmers and fishermen, others were poets and tax collectors, doctors and kings. They wrote 66 books, 3 different languages across 3 continents, and we call it the Bible. And the story begins when God said, "Let there be light." And those 4 words are still creating galaxies as the universe expands 42 miles per second. And the story ends just like it begins. God will say, "I am making all things new." And the end of human history is the beginning of eternity. Heaven is a place where there's no more sorrow, no more sickness, no more crying, no more pain. It's where wrongs are made right, and God is with us, and we are with God. Now, in between Genesis and Revelation, there's the fall of man, the great flood, the exodus out of Egypt, Judges and Kings, the rise and fall of nations. There's villains and heroes, tragedies and comedies. But of all the things recorded in this book, there is one event, one tipping point, one turning point, one defining moment, and that is an empty tomb. It's when heaven invaded earth, life defeated death, and it's because of that we can cry out, "Christ is risen, Christ is risen indeed." Happy Easter, everybody. So glad you're here. You made it. Listen, we have a lot of people in overflow right now. Can we give them a shout? Come on. We're glad you're here. We love you guys. We'll be looking at Matthew chapter 28 and John chapter 20 as we look at that first Resurrection Sunday. The story goes that 2 women went to see the tomb of Jesus, and to their surprise, when they got there, the tombstone had been rolled away, and an angel was sitting on top of it and says this, "Don't be afraid. I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead, just as he said would happen. Come see where his body was lying." I want you to know this morning that the tomb is empty and everything has changed. Everything has changed. The angel wasn't quite done. He left these women with some final instructions. And in verse 7, he says this, "Now go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, and he's going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there. Remember what I have told you." Jesus is alive, and he makes sure to give an open invitation for his disciples, those that he was so close to for 3.5 years, to let them know, hey, I want to be with you. Now, they should have been excited. They should have been like, he did it. He did exactly what he said he would do. It should have been a party. There should have been balloons. There should have been snacks. A charcuterie board. Call it a charcuterie. I'm sorry. Is that too cheesy? Was that too cheesy? All right. I'm sorry. All right, 9:45. I'm checking in on you. However, this is the response we see from John's account. It says in verse 19 of John 20, that Sunday evening, the disciples were meeting behind locked doors. They were afraid of the Jewish leaders. They're scared. They're hiding. We also find out later that one of the disciples, Thomas, doesn't even show up at all. And now they're closed off. They've built up walls from a real encounter with the risen Savior. They're missing out on the greatest invitation of all time because of their fear, because of their doubt. Hold that thought. In fall of 1985, hundreds of people were invited to a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in Washington, D.C. These people were invited because they won tickets to a Redskins football game. Not only that, there was a free brunch with food and drink. There was this reception party, and they had a chance to win Super Bowl tickets as well. This was a big deal because Redskins games in the 80s were a big deal. Listen, they were the team of the decade, and at that moment had a 149 straight sellout streak. So on December 15th, 1985, 101 people showed up. They took the invitation, and when they showed up, it was a party. Redskin cheerleaders were there to greet them at the door. They were personally escorted in. There was brunch happening, food and drink, lively music. The mascot was there. Everybody was cheering. It was a great, awesome moment. Just one problem. It was all fake. It was a sting operation from the U.S. Marshals to capture fugitives in the area. Every person you see in the video, every person working there was an undercover agent. The cheerleaders, the wait staff, the janitorial crew, the mascot, even the chicken, they were all part of the deal. It was a scheme to bring in the most hardened of criminals. Fugitives guilty of rape, assault, burglary, even murder. And they wanted to bring them in and surprise them so they could be brought into custody without incident, without any harm being done. This sting was called Operation Flagship, and it's considered one of the greatest, most successful mass arrests in U.S. history. They even had a little fun with it. The fake cable company that put on the production, they were called Flagship International Sports Television, which was an acronym for the strike team name FIST. As they walked in, there was music playing. The song was, "I Fought the Law." The hundreds of invites they sent out to them were signed by I, Michael Detnaw, which spelled backwards is I am wanted. Every cheerleader that escorted these winners in weren't just giving hugs, they were also discreetly frisking them for weapons while they were being brought in. Anybody suspicious of being dangerous, they would call them a double winner. They would shout it out, and they would give them a balloon. So they're walking around with a balloon to identify that there could be trouble. Then what happened next, they were all escorted upstairs into this ballroom where the master of ceremony gathered them together. And he says, "We got one more surprise for you. You're under arrest." And they were surrounded and brought into custody. For many of you, this has been your view of faith. This has been your view of God's love. This has been your view of his church, that it's a gotcha. Man, if I go there, they're going to get me. That it's not real. It's not real. And if it is real, it can't possibly be good news for me. And you've lived your life waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're living your life waiting for the worst to happen, feeling like a failure. Listen, we are all messed up. Do me a favor. Look to the person to your left. Look at them. They're in their Sunday best. They look great. They're messed up. Look to the person to your right. They're in their Easter best. They got problems, okay? They got problems. We're all messed up, but the lie of the enemy whispers to you and say, you're the only one that's messed up. And it's not true. Another lie the enemy whispers is, you're too bad. You can't be saved. Maybe some lie that the enemy whispers to you is that you're good. You don't need to be saved, right? You're not like those other guys. You're not like these fugitives. Your good outweighs your bad. You'll be okay. Listen, I want you to know, Christianity is not a morality code. Yes, we love our enemies. Yes, we turn the other cheek. Yes, we go the extra mile. But this is not behavior modification. Jesus didn't come to make bad people good. He came to bring dead people back to life. This goes beyond religion. This is a relationship with the risen Savior. So how does Jesus approach those who built up walls, those who've locked themselves in, those who are scared and afraid? How does he do it? Well, we see in verse 19, suddenly, Jesus was standing there among them. Peace be with you, he said. As he spoke, he showed them his wounds in his hand and his side. They were filled with joy when they saw the Lord. Don't miss that first word, suddenly. So Jesus didn't knock on the door. We know it was locked. Jesus just showed up. And this is miraculous, but it's also kind of funny. Like, Jesus kind of, like, surprise, you missed me? Like, this is a moment that he really could mess with him, but it was suddenly. Thomas missed this moment because he wasn't there. What if we made it a priority to be in the house of the Lord together? What if we said, Lord, we're going to show up, and not only will we show up, the prayer of our hearts is, Lord, surprise me. What if we came and lived with a holy anticipation that every time we show up, listen, I believe that the Lord has plans and a purpose for you, and if you're willing and you're available, God can show up and do some incredible things in your life. He can really surprise you better than you could ever dream or imagine. Live with a holy anticipation that, Lord, anywhere, anytime, you can show up and everything changes. Let's not miss out on what God is doing in our lives. Now, Operation Flagship had a signal word that the master of ceremony would use to key all the agents to come in and swarm the room. The signal word was surprise. When he says, I have a surprise for you, 25 agents would storm the room and arrest every single one of them. Now, what kind of surprise is Jesus doing here? He's not showing up to scold them. He's not showing up to say, I told you so. He's not showing up to say, I'm bringing shame on you. No, he's showing up to give them a peace that can calm their fear. I want you to know, because of the empty tomb, you have nothing to hide. Because of the empty tomb, I have nothing to hide. That Jesus put skin on, breathed our air, died our death, and rose again, just to show that he is for us and is victorious against anything that can come against us. We have no reason to hide. Who you are today doesn't have to be who you are tomorrow. So stop living like you're on the run. Stop sleeping with one eye open. Stop wondering when your past is going to catch up with you. Listen, we spend a lot of energy remembering failures that God spent a lot of love saying you could forget. His love is so much greater than our past and our mistakes. Psalm 103:10 says this, God does not treat us as our sin deserves. We are far worse than we could ever imagine, but we are far more loved than we could ever dream. So we don't have to fear death. We don't have to fear the devil. We don't have to fear anything else this world can throw at us because of the empty tomb. There is simply nothing to hide. After Jesus appeared to the disciples, they went ahead and found Thomas. They told Thomas, you missed out, man. Jesus showed up, and he's real, and he's alive. And this is Thomas's response. He replied, I won't believe unless I see the nail wounds in his hands, put my finger into them, and place my hand in the wound in his side. I won't believe unless. Maybe you've been that way before. I'm not going to follow you unless. I'm not going to believe unless you show up this way. You do this or that for me. And what we're doing when we say that is that we're putting Jesus in a box. And we say, Lord, I trust you in this area, but there's no way I trust you in my marriage. No way I can trust you in my finances. No way I can trust you in my career. No way can I trust you in the past mistakes of my life. And what we do, that leads us to live a life completely void of joy. We miss out on what God has for us. So we try to do things our own way. And we don't forgive ourselves. We go chase experiences that we know won't be fulfilling to us. And we convince ourselves there's no way that God can help someone like me. And when you do that, you're putting Jesus in a box. And putting Jesus in a box is just like when they try to put Jesus in a tomb. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. We got to understand that, yes, Thomas had doubts, but some of us believe that there's people here that don't have doubts. We think they're like super saved, that they came in here floating, that they eat communion for breakfast. We all have doubts. I've had my doubts. And if you're new to church, what they called Thomas was Doubting Thomas. That was his nickname. How would you like your greatest mistake to become your nickname for the rest of your life? I am so thankful that Jesus never once called him Doubting Thomas. And neither does he summarize you by your greatest failures. It's the love of the Lord, but we have these mistakes, and this is the kindness of God that we see in Jesus in verse 26. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and this time Thomas doesn't want to miss out. This time he's with them. And though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hand, reach out your hand and put it in my side. Stop doubting and believe." Jesus is not intimidated by your doubt. But listen, even when you doubt, Jesus still shows up. Jesus was willing to meet Thomas right there where he was. Jesus is willing to meet you right where you are. His presence and peace, his goodness and grace are a comfort to those who doubt. So Jesus did a little show and tell. Said, "Hey, Thomas, if you need to see the wounds to believe, go for it, buddy. Here it is." I love that Jesus was willing to give him exactly what he needed to believe. I think he'll do the same for you as well. He'll show you, he'll give you exactly what you need for you to believe in him. But Jesus doesn't love us at a distance. He's willing to come right into the middle of our mess, right into the middle of our hurts, our hang-ups, our habits. And when you're suffering and when you're hurting and when you're afraid and when you have doubts, Jesus is more than willing to roll up his sleeves and show you the scars and say, "I hurt with you." And more importantly, Jesus hurts for you. He took on the cross for us. God didn't just say he loved us. He showed it. He showed it on the cross. He proved it with the empty tomb. By the way, this church is a church that strives to bring the gospel to eye level. That listen, hey, we know you're hurting. We know there's things that are going on. Listen, we don't want to tell you everything you've done wrong. You already know. We want to give you the hope of Jesus. Today is about hope, and we want you to know that you're welcome here. You belong here. And you can bring your wounds and you can bring your doubts, and we can journey this life together. Because of the empty tomb, we have nothing to lose. Because of the empty tomb, we have nothing to lose. When Jesus walked out of that tomb, all bets are off and all things are possible. When that stone rolled away, your shame, your guilt, your fear rolled away with it. And what did Jesus say? Peace be with you. If you're reading John 20 and you're keeping count, this is the third time Jesus mentions this exact phrase, peace be with you. Because peace is not a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Your lifetime is an opportunity to receive the peace of God. That over and over and over again, Jesus will make himself available to you and offer you the peace that this world can't comprehend. Now, this is more than a platitude. This is more than a catchphrase. This is a commanding presence of Jesus to say, peace be with you. You remember the story when Jesus was with his disciples on a boat and a storm started raging? And they were fearful of their life. But in a moment, Jesus stood up and he said, "Peace be still to the raging waves." And it was calm. And the same peace be still to the raging waves is the same peace be still to your raging heart. That Jesus says, my presence comes with authority, comes with power, and I can offer you peace. His peace gets the last word. Doubt doesn't get the last word. Fear doesn't get the last word. Jesus gets the last word in your life. It's John 14 that says this, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. Peace isn't the absence of trouble, it's the presence of God in your life. And it's really the key that unlocks joy, unlocks life, and what Jesus called it, abundant life, that you can experience and you can have as your own. It reminds me of a guy named Stephen Thomas, another Thomas. If he looks a little sad, that's because he is, because he had 7,002 Bitcoin worth $490 million currently, and he's lost the password to access it. That's a bad day. With that hard drive, he has 10 tries to get it right before it self-destructs. He only has 2 tries left. And he's been holding on to this thing with no password for over 10 years. However, in the last year, a company has spent a lot of time, a lot of research on that specific hard drive, and they feel confident that if they were given that hard drive, they could unlock it for him. Stephen isn't willing to give it to him. Why? He feels like he has a lot to lose. He feels like one mistake could cost him everything. I want you to know that when you're with Jesus, and by the way, your life is far more precious, far more valuable. But when you give your life to Jesus, you have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose. He holds the key. That's exactly what he says in Revelation 1:18. Jesus says, I am the living one. I was dead, but now look, I'm alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and Hades. Come on, the devil is so defeated that he doesn't even have the keys to his own house. Because of the empty tomb, Jesus offers the key of keys. We have nothing to lose. The resurrection is the greatest news ever. God is for you. God is on your side. You have nothing to lose. And if the tomb is empty, start living like it. Start living like it matters. Listen, going back to Thomas, his legacy wasn't that he doubted, right? We've all doubted. His legacy is that he was honest about those doubts. And by the way, all the other disciples doubted too. They were just way better pretending that they weren't. And because of his doubt, it actually became a catalyst for his faith. It actually allowed him to be positioned to have a deeper faith. And what does he say? My Lord and my God. When he saw Jesus, he makes this incredible confession of faith, my Lord, my God. Theologians believe this is the most powerful, most concise declaration of Jesus' deity in all of the New Testament. So the same guy that thought the resurrection didn't happen, he doubted it, is the same guy that gives a powerful, clear confession of faith. Some say that when he said, my Lord, he was putting Jesus on the throne of his heart. And then when he said, my God, he was acknowledging that Jesus is on the throne of the universe. And a simple, profound statement, my Lord, my God, but I want you to know it's more than a statement. It was a life-changing moment for him. It was real. Thomas wasn't the same guy after this. His life changed after this. He was filled with faith. He went and became a missionary and was preaching boldly. Church history lets us know that he sailed to India, established 7 churches, and then died a martyr's death as he was thrust with a spear. No longer Thomas the doubter. How about Thomas the brave? How about Thomas of second chances? Everything changed when he chose Jesus. And Thomas's story tells us that we're not limited to how we started. That who we used to be doesn't have to be who we can be. that we can experience breakthrough even after our biggest failure. And if we're going through doubt and we're going through fear, Jesus promised to be right there with us. At the end of Operation Flagship, as the fugitives were arrested, they were escorted into a bus to be transferred to a prison. And on the bus ride, they actually passed Redskins Stadium. And it was recorded that one of the fugitives said, "Do we still get to go to the game?" Their invitation was revoked. But I want you to know, because of an empty tomb and because of God's great love for you, there's an open invitation that still stands for you today, for you to make a declaration as well. John 20:29, Jesus told him, "You believe because you have seen me." And I believe at this moment, he turns, not looking at Thomas, but looking into the future, looking directly at us. He says, "Blessed are those who believe without seeing me." This is a blessing for all of us today, that Jesus is so good, so ready to meet you right where you are, so full of love and compassion, that because Jesus is alive, I have a choice. Because Jesus is alive, you have a choice. Doubt is normal and it's natural, but doubt can actually lead us to a deeper faith. And we got to get to a point, just like Thomas, where we can declare, "My Lord and my God." I want you to know the best way to celebrate Easter is to allow Jesus to have a resurrection in your life. I want you to know, you don't have to just celebrate the resurrection. You can experience it. You can live it for yourself. Because of the empty tomb, I have nothing to hide, nothing to lose, but I do have a choice. And so do you. So do you.